welcome everybody. I'm glad you're here. My name is Bill Fanning, and for those who've come to these before, you know me. I'm the one of the guys help running Talk, and really excited about our discussion today. I'm excited for a couple of reasons. One is having Rocki join us, and that to me is just awesome because I have an immense amount of respect and appreciation for her and the work she does and the things that she's promoting in the world of diversity. And she's, to me, just a rock star. So that she was able to give us an hour of her time means the world. Second, this is a really important topic to me because I think and I'll just start with this before I get into everything else. I'm a fan of getting rid of the word diversity. And I'm a fan of making this just the way we hire. Because I think that it's time that we don't isolate, we don't think about things as compartmentalized of diversity hiring. This is the way you do business. And I think that's what I this is how I look at the world. And so I'm excited to have this conversation because I think it can help us think a little bit about moving closer to that goal. So couple announcements. Let me take my Apple Watch off because I am like Pavlov's dog with that thing. Every time it buzzes, I have to look at it. And it's just my daughter trying to see how much money she can extort from me for the weekend. Um, and it's funny, it's always an interesting extortion. It's, can you give me the money now for the chores I'm going to do this weekend? But then this weekend she won't feel well and I won't get the money back. I'm spotting a trend with how she negotiates.
Well, Bill, at least you're not like us, where we have just automated payments at some point in time to their accounts, and then we've never taken them back, even though they're adults. So that's a whole different part of extortion. We can have a
Yeah, that's really
conversation
good.
about that another time.
That's automated extortion. I like it.
Mhm.
No, I just text started rolling in. So hey guys, just a couple quick updates. For the folks joining, if you're new, my name is Bill Fanning. I help run the Talk organization. Couple quick updates I wanted to go over. We are actively working on the new version of Talk. The plan is to do a soft launch during the month of May, and as we get into June to bring everyone over. So you will see more information from me. We're finishing the single sign-on process right now and setting everything up. And it's going to be I think it's going to be a great advancement for our community in the way we talk and interact with one another. I am working on a podcast. I was going to record the last one last Friday. And of course, I woke up and I had no voice. Literally, I was just squawking. So we're going to get that going quickly, and it'll be fun. And there is a link here, and I've sent it out earlier, and I'm happy to drop it into the chat. But if anyone would want to be part of that process, I'd welcome you. We're going to try and record one every Friday morning, and it should be a great experience to just promote talk about relevant topics, and have some fun. Speaking about things we're talking about, here's kind of the next coming week, month or so. We're talking about inclusive hiring today, uh, and then using AI in job description building. I know there's a lot of people who use ChatGPT, so I think that's really interesting. On May 8th, we have Ariana Hill joining us, and she's phenomenal. She's going to talk about building resiliency in a team. And I thought that was really relevant for TA because there's so many odd things going on with the economy or political tailwinds or what's going on with AI, that resiliency really is an interesting thing to think about. The next person I've invited is a person I've known for a long time to talk about agentic AI and what that is and how it can be used. And then I have Trent Cotton coming on the 22nd to talk about becoming a talent engineer and what that is and means. And then on May 29th, we're going to be talking more about contingent workforce. So I don't know the exact date. Norm, you probably know better than me, but is it 2030 or 2035 that it's estimated that half of our jobs will be contingent?
It's a great question. I don't know.
Good.
Seems like it's already
Yeah.
happening.
But so contingent workforce management is a really interesting aspect of talent acquisition. And so we just put that out there, and that'll be happening on the 29th. If you're new to Talk, you're coming in from LinkedIn, please join. It's free. We'd love to have you. We welcome everybody in the talent acquisition space to come and be part of this community, contribute as much as little as you'd like and participate in the learnings that we're all trying to have. If you are in Chicago, we have two phenomenal events coming up. Next Thursday, we're doing a conversation about AI in talent acquisition, led by smart recruiters. But it's really an open dialogue around what it can be and do. And we're going to be collaborating as teams. And it's not just sit and listen, but it's contribute. And hopefully we can all learn something to take away. And then the following Tuesday in Chicago, Data People is having a phenomenal dinner and Italian this time, which is great. I'm a fan. And if that's something that's interests you, it's always a great community event, great networking, great interactions, super fun. We have a private room, some great food. You can't go wrong. So if you can come to that, that'd be awesome. And then the final thing that I wanted to mention is Talent Sphere. The summit is coming. And we have some great things happening there. It's going to be a super good time. Rocki is going to be there and speaking and leading a discussion panel. John, the two events I was talking about in Chicago are in-person events, and the Talent Sphere event is obviously in person as well. The initial discussions I mentioned are our weekly discussion forum, which are like today virtual. And that's it. I wanted to take a minute now to introduce today's guest, Rocki Howard, somebody who I've known for a while, and as I mentioned, admire and respect quite a bit, is the Chief People and Equity Officer for Textio, as well as running a group or a community for diversity called Diversiology. Did I say that right, Rocki?
Yeah, but it's a little bit more than a group. So let me just do a
Okay, yeah,
little.
tell us what it is so we can.
Yeah. So one, yes, I am the Chief People and Equity Officer for Textio. I'm also the founder of Diversiology, and Diversiology really helps DEI practitioners, allies, and advocates to maximize their resources and optimize their impact through content, coaching, and community. We're really excited. We have a free community. If you're interested in joining, I'll drop the link in the chat, where there's over 400 practitioners and there's lots of free resources and things that you can join there. In addition, we do have paid programs, digital program content management tools for diversity practitioners. So I do both. I'm a busy, busy lady.
You are indeed. So I'm super happy Rocki is here to join us, and she can give us a lot of insights as we dive into this. So I put together an agenda, but I wanted to just be clear and say that this is this is me clicking too much. This is a suggestion. This is a dialogue that we can all partake in. So if there's any other direction or question that anybody on the call today has, please definitely feel free to stop us, make this as interactive as you want. Really excited to just continue these types of conversations because I think they're beneficial for all of us. And so, I actually passed on the poll because I was struggling on what a poll to put together. So we're really just at the introduction. I meant to take that out. My apologies. But really wanted to just talk about some of the trends in hiring with the inclusion and diversity. And there's obviously some challenges in today's climate, which I think are interesting and challenging at the same time. Hang on one sec. My computer's putting up a fight here. So I will bring that right back.
So again, while you're doing that, I want to just say I love Trent Cotton. I want him to hear this if he listens to this. And so you all definitely would be in for a treat to join the session that he's going to be doing later this month.
Yeah, absolutely. Trent is also going to be speaking at Talent Sphere, but he's just a great he's a great thought leader in talent acquisition, and obviously works for a pretty cool AI company, Hatchworks, which gives us a really interesting view. He gives him an interesting perspective on how AI is being adopted and used because he works for an AI company. So really kind of to set the stage. For today, there's kind of an interesting ebb and flow happening when it comes to inclusivity and hiring, right? So we have as we've talked about before, some larger organizations in the news making changes to their diversity programs, or what they're calling the diversity program, or the focus of the investment they're making because of some of the political headwinds. But when you think about it, and this is research I did, and I have all the sources, but I'm not going to bore you all of them now. From what I found, about 60% of companies now have a DEI program. And that is continuing to climb. It's up 6 points percentage-wise from 2024 into 2025. So that continually shows that more organizations are making kind of an investment in that area. About 66% of companies now have some form of DEI budget. And what's exciting to me is that's grown 12 points since 2023. So you can see that organizations are recognizing the need to have more unified hiring processes, and that they're increasing that is awesome. I think that there's obviously some anti-DEI backlash that's happening from different organizations, from the political overtones we're listening to. And, as I mentioned, some high-profile companies have kind of scaled some of that stuff back. What I noted is that what's working is a lot of organizations still understand that DEI is a competitive advantage when hiring people. It's something I look for and evaluate, and I think it's something that a lot of applicants are looking for and respect when they see that in an employer's mission statement or employer brand. As part of that brand, talking about your inclusivity helps you hire and bring people in. Neurodiversity hiring is on the rise, which I can't tell you how excited I am to see that, because I do have a member of my family is at some point on some level on the spectrum. And so it's really interesting to create an environment that's a safe space for all of us when they come into the employment world. And so investing in growing that is definitely important, as well as flexible work arrangements. We can see that growing quite a bit. And the other thing that I think helps us evaluate people more fairly is skills-based hiring. So for me, as I looked at the world, that's what I found in terms of just some quick data of what's working. When I started to think about what's slipping, you can start to see that organizations are stepping away from gender goals, that there's a noticeable decline in the mention of DEI in what they're doing. And I will, not to call out a certain subset, but what I had noticed from some of my research is that was tied to a lot of federal contractors or people who do business with the federal government. So it's a logical reaction, I think, to some of the pressures that they're feeling to start stepping away from terms that are going to create conflict in their ability to do business. The thing that is most, and I wanted to end on a high note, is the mention of belonging. That word is grown almost 60% in the last year, which is a really good way to show that while the DEI specific terminology is being stepped away from, the focus on inclusion and creating a safe space for us all to go to work and be respected and valued is still on the rise. And to me, that's really exciting. So, Rocki, one of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit about was, given the mixed signals that we see, companies are boosting DEI internally, yet some are pulling back. How would you characterize DEI hiring right now? When you think about it, you get a lot of interesting perspective from your platform, from Textio, from the world you're in. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, you know what? And I think to your point, this is a timely conversation. I want to apologize in advance, you all. I have the conference cooties. I've been in 2 conferences in the last 4 weeks, and I have a cold, so please bear with my voice. And what is bound to be some coughing and sniffling as we go through this. I'm so happy to be here today, and thank you for welcoming me to the Talks community. I think there's a couple of things that I really want to say here. One, it is exceptionally important to be careful about what you're reading and how you're consuming that. Because what's happening is a lot of the stories are being curated to fit the narrative that DEI is going away and it's fear-based. Very interesting, through my work at Textio, recently we just did Textio talks with about 100 of our clients. And what we found, and we asked a poll question, we asked several, but one that sticks in my mind, and I don't have the exact numbers, but we asked our clients, in terms of their DEI initiatives, were they investing more? Were they investing less? Were they decreasing their investment, or whether they were holding? And what struck me is more than 80% said they're either investing more, and I think about 20% were investing more. And overall, 80% of the answers were, we're holding tight on our current investment, or we're investing more. If you're looking at LinkedIn or the news, that's not the story that we're getting. So I think we have to be very careful about understanding that some of the news that we're getting are meant to feed a narrative that's already out there, right? And so we need to be careful. I think when I look at the companies that are pulling back publicly, I tend to see them fall in one or three categories, right? First, we've got the ones, let's be honest, that were never really truly committed in the first place. It was a marketing stand. They signed some kind of, pledge. They gave a big donation back in 2020. The statements were there. The logos went rainbow for, Pride Month. But there was never a real investment or strategy or accountability behind the promises. And so now they're taking that opportunity to tap out. That's kind of category number one in my head. Category number two are the companies that are well-intentioned, but one could fall in this category that you hold on, let me get to that. There are the companies who are well-intentioned, but one of the things that I found is that quite a few companies didn't have a strategy when they started a DEI function. It wasn't tied to the business imperatives. It was lightly tied to the human imperatives. And so they didn't get the traction they wanted. They didn't get the results that they had hoped for. And now they're using this moment to recalibrate. And I think that some are recalibrating. Yes, some are retreating. I'm not trying to minimize that, but there is some recalibration going on. And in some cases, some real necessary recalibration. And then I think the third category are those that are pulling back as a calculated response to the political climate. So Bill, just like you talked about, that's up on the screen, DEI mentions are coming down because people believe that this is going to protect their business. People are federal contractors. They've been told they have to take language out. And hopefully we'll get to touch a little bit on the executive orders, but this is a fear-based response. And so I think when you think about, like the state of hiring and what's going on right now, like I think that sets the context for people, right? And so I also think that when the DEI momentum really picked up, most of the responsibility was dropped into the lap of the talent acquisition professionals who are sitting right here. Like how many of you back in 2020, got a list of goals that you had to do this for? Look, I can see Ginger. Ginger, I don't know why I can see you, but I can see you nodding right now, right? Like back in 2020, if you were a TA professional, all of a sudden you got these representation goals. You weren't taught how, there wasn't a strategy. We didn't have a way to do it. It was dropped at us. And then some CEOs went, check, I gave it to my TA people, it's done. And that's a problem because while TA is a critical entry point, it was never meant to carry the full weight of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So, back to your point, like if we're hiring diverse talent, and Bill, I don't disagree with you. It shouldn't be we have a diverse hiring strategy. It should be we have a hiring strategy that clearly includes all dimensions of diversity, and that we take extraordinary means to make sure all of those people are in top of funnel. And oh, by the way, let me take another quick side note. Representation and diversity and meritocracy are not mutually exclusive. The goal has always been to have qualified candidates, even when they're diverse in the pipeline. All right, we could come back to that if we need to later. But here was the other problem. If we're hiring diverse talent into environments that aren't prepared to welcome them, support them, foster their growth and development, we're not just failing them, but we're potentially doing more harm than good. And we're not protecting the work that you all are doing as talent acquisition professionals. Inclusion has to be baked into the entire talent experience, from how we hire to how we onboard to how we promote to how we lead. And like, it's easy when we're not doing that for work to be misinterpreted as quotas, and that's never been the goal. So it's kind of my thoughts.
No, I definitely, I appreciate it. And I think that's a great way of reflecting on the inclusivity of the hiring being, designed at a way that is focused on including everyone. But I think the onboarding in the company culture of supporting that type of inclusivity is mission critical because, from my own experience, and while it's a military transition, I'm sure that other people can relate to it with diverse backgrounds. I came from a very different environment, and I transitioned into corporate America, and I was very lost, but was assigned a mentor, and that helped me quite a bit because it was someone that I didn't have a lot in common with, but they had walked the path that I was now on. They had meant, traveled before me on that journey, and were able to give me some really clear connectivity and made me feel included and understanding. And so I'm sure that those type of employee resource groups or other things that organizations can do make such a meaningful impact in terms of the success of bringing, a group of different people together and making it, fostering a culture of inclusivity and performance and focusing on getting a job done is really important. So that's awesome. Uh, I really love the fact that we could see bes beside I'm trying to think of beside what we read on the news, let's just put it right there, because I couldn't think of a politically correct way to say that. But beside what we hear on the news, it's awesome to see the data showing that we're still moving in the right direction when you step away from the narrative that is coming at us from some of the media outlets. So I wanted to stop here for a second. And just see is from the folks who are attending, how are you feeling about it in your world? And, share with us what you feel comfortable. But as you look at your world and your recruiting organizations, how do you feel kind of, are you still embracing and moving forward? Has been some slowing down? Has there been a change in priority? And just curious, not to penalize anyone, but just from a discussion topic, I'd really value some feedback in terms of how it's impacting us in our day-to-day professional lives.
Maybe I can help here,
Sure.
because it's an uncomfortable thing to put this out here, right? Aubrey, thank you for being courageous enough. Here we go, embracing and moving forward, but having to educate in a more adaptive way, for sure. Austin, our org is being mindful for verbiage, but moving forward with business as usual. And I think that's what a lot of companies are doing. And so, Austin, thank you for saying that out loud, for sure. Let's see if anybody else has anything to say. You guys have gotten it started. So before I say anything, I want to hear what you guys have to say. But it's you all, there are no right or wrong answers. There's lots of people who are like, my company is now pulling back, and I how do we now continue to work with less resources and less commitment, right? We're from that to lots of companies are like, we don't know what to do. So we're just going to hold until we see how things are going to break out. And so they've kind of frozen initiatives, et cetera. So we're all on different spectrums here. So I want to give everybody a few more minutes now that the conversation is going.
Doreen, you raised your hand. You're free to come off and share with us a little bit. Love your thoughts.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So what I was going to say was, I think that there tends to be this, how do I say this the PC way? I feel like diversity is looked at as, the way that some organizations are looking at it is, whether they're hiring X, class of individuals, like all different categories. And if, like, for example, it's all women or whatever, my thought process is to hire like a select, minority or whether it's women or LGBTQ, whatever it is, if you're only doing one avenue, that's not diversity. Diversity is diversity in thought, and you're bringing in people that have diverse backgrounds and cultures and beliefs, and it goes on, so that different views come together to create the best possible scenario, the best possible to work together to come to decisions and understanding where people can be part of something, have that inclusivity. But if it's only geared to just hiring senior leadership or only that are female or more females, and that to me is not diversity. It's diversity of thought.
Yeah. No, I think that is an awesome perspective, and I'm glad you shared that with us, because it's something that I think connects to what I was a personal feeling on my front, which is absolutely diversity is not tied to one group or another, but it's that diversity of thought and diversity of background, and creating that top of funnel that brings in a lot of people, and then a fair and equitable way to evaluate talent, that the skill set of the person coming in is what brings them into the organization.
I might have an unpopular opinion, but I kind of feel a little bit of relief that the focus has changed a little, because as a recruiter, my goal was always to find the candidate that was the best fit for the job. And where I recruited them from, yes, I would expand outside of any normal pace and maybe focus on diverse avenues to recruit. But in the end, I always felt like no matter who or what it was, I was looking for the right candidate for the right job. And I think even if you keep an open mind like that, you will come across a diverse group of candidates for the role. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. I want to add to both of those, and Ginger, thank you very much. And I think you're absolutely right. We have to, and I've always advocated for the multiple dimensions of diversity. And we need to think about it. It's not about, to the point earlier, it's not all about hiring women or hiring all veterans or hiring all Black people. It should be about the multiple dimensions of diversity, including how we think differently, how we show up differently. And you're absolutely right, Ginger. I think it is about, we always have to hire the best person for the job. The challenge that I will always issue back to people, and one of the things that I just can't not say as a DEI practitioner, is what we have to be careful about in this current state is that we back away from the importance of expanding the top of the funnel, so that we make sure that there's enough dimensions of diversity that can come through and are qualified and actually land in the org. And that's the challenge, because we all know that in some times that can take a little bit longer. It takes a deliberate actions to ensure that the top of your funnel is filled with diverse and qualified candidates, right? And so the only thing I want to add to that is that as we're starting to see this shift, we can't move back on this focus.
Right. And I think that's a lot of, I think, what we're seeing in here. I mean, there are a lot of organizations not moving back. They're just restating and how they're approaching it. But once you start going down that path, you need to continue to do it. So question, maybe a little change of, but this is something I dealt with coming from a recruitment advertising background, that I used to talk to a lot of companies about the inclusivity at the top of funnel, and organizations, but that's great. How do we get there? So, I'm curious, Rocki, and if this is valuable for anybody else, but I think that's mission critical to being able to, as a first step down this path. And I think that's a place where maybe some organizations could struggle. So I'm curious, as we maybe talk about that for a second, and I'd be curious from anybody who's attending, some of the things you've done to expand the outreach of your employment opportunities to bring in that broader perspective of thought and background into your hiring funnel.
Well, I think there's multiple things to do. There's not a quick hit list. And so
correct.
I think the first thing is to remember there's not a quick one-time thing to be done, right? First of all, you have to have a brand that is authentic and represents the culture and the company that you have and that you want to build, and that has language that is attracting, again, multiple dimensions of diversity, and that it is accessible, because guess what? If it's not accessible, you're already excluding people, and you're already being very clear that, you know, that's not a priority to you. And so it starts with the brand. It goes through with job descriptions. Are your job descriptions inclusive? What's the language in there? All of those things say something to people about who you are. Whether you're saying things or whether you're not saying things, they all say something. And so those all need to be very deliberate. And then I think we need to think about, where are we fishing? Like, are we, like, let's be truthful. Are we posting and praying? Are we just like throwing it up on LinkedIn and Indeed and looking at what comes through the funnel? And, you know, some of us have to do that sometimes. We get it, but that's not how you do inclusive recruiting. Like, where are the pipelines that you are building on a consistent basis to make sure that your top of funnel has a diverse range of people? What are your community organizations? Jackie, I see you. I'm at a nonprofit org. We use, you know, different job boards targeting specific audiences, right? So how are you bringing things into your funnel? Where are you posting them? What are your community organizations? How are you, do you ever reach out to your ERGs for every role you post and say, hey, we'd love to have your referrals here? Are you cultivating relationships with different colleges and universities? What does that look like? I mean, there are multiple things you do, but what tends to happen is we pick one of those and maybe double down on that, instead of having a broad spectrum of pipelines that feed into our overall pipeline at the top of the funnel.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for, you know, and that, I think one of the things that that makes me think about is employer brand, right? So we put these employment opportunities out there, and let's say we're successful, and Jackie, it's a great comment. We're using different job boards or different targeted communities to bring the jobs so people come back in. But when they land, and this is a joke I used to make with people in another life, that, hey, if I want to hire a military veteran and they come to my ATS system, my career site landing page, and there's 3 or 4 20-something-year-old kids in t-shirts high-fiving over a wooden coffee table with a cappuccino, a fancy notebook, an open Mac, and a pen, which a lot of ATS systems used to have, that's not going to resonate with the veteran coming out of the military. And so that breaks that, it makes a quick break for that chain. But you know, it's very interesting to the brand, but you know, I think what maybe where some people struggle, and maybe we could talk about this a little bit, because it also allows us to talk about maybe some of the executive orders, is we're building that brand. How do we stay ethically and legally focused so we're not creating something that's going to create friction, but actually solve problems? And I'm curious how you've seen some organizations kind of tackle that.
Well, I mean, first of all, let's talk about the executive orders, right? There's been 2 executive orders that are currently reshaping how some organizations are thinking about DEI, right? There was Executive Order 14151 that really directed federal agencies to dismantle DEI offices and programs and frame them as divisive and wasteful, right? Which I'm sure shook all of us, because you know, we have to know that what happens in the federal government is going to have some implication in private sector, right? And then there was Executive Order 14173 that took it a step further and started targeting federal contractors and grant recipients, right? It discouraged funding for any programs perceived to favor identity-based outcomes. And it used very broad and vague language that was very confusing to all of us. So the first thing I want to say is that executive orders are not law, right? Executive orders are not law. And like, look, we're seeing some of this play out in the news over the last couple of days where Harvard has just said, yeah, thank you. No, we're not going to do it. Take your money. We'll figure it out. Right. You also see the judiciary branch pushing back on a lot of the executive orders and the comments that's coming out of, our current administration. Legal scholars and civil rights advocates are arguing that these orders infringe on free speech, contradict civil rights, and, chill legitimate inclusion work. The other thing is that some of these executive orders are in direct contradiction to what is current federal law. And so this can all be kind of confusing, right?
Mhm.
So I think when we think about staying legally sound and ethically grounded, first of all, can I just encourage you not to respond out of fear? Because a lot of us are responding out of fear. And so we hear something and we're like, oh my gosh, it said we had to take all of this language out. And so we've gone through and we've stripped all of the language out. If you're a federal contractor, you know what? Maybe that's appropriate. Maybe that's what you have to do, but please do it thoughtfully and understand there's a different set of implications too. Partner with the right legal company that aligns with your level of organizational risk tolerance, right? If you have a little bit more risk tolerance, don't partner with a legal firm that is like very conservative. Make sure that your legal partner can help you given your organizational's risk tolerance. Clarify if this is a compliance requirement. Like before you go and make a change, ask yourself, is this a legal mandate or are we reacting to a perceived risk? Because that's a big question. Like a lot of people are assuming things are legal mandates when it's really a perceived risk. And I would encourage you to not overcorrect based on the headlines, right? Consult with legal, document your rationale, stay updated as these things move through the court.
Yeah.
You may want to take a moment to reframe versus erase. Look, I want to be really honest. I absolutely hate that the initials DEI have been weaponized into something it was never meant to be. Hint clue, one of the things that we're encouraging you to do is instead of saying DEI, say the words diversity, equity, inclusion. People tend to have a different response, but people will hear DEI and they just stop, right? Like it is a weapon right now. And
Yeah.
so maybe you don't have to abandon completely, but maybe you're a little bit more thoughtful in your language, so, maybe inclusive hiring strategy replaces words like racial equity hiring goals. So, that's a way to kind of protect yourself without erasing the work that you're doing. We had several people talk about, I'm adjusting, but we're still doing the work. And at the end of the day, we have to act with care. Consider how your decisions will impact those most affected. Bill, think about those stats you showed at the beginning where our candidates, no matter what you think, are still expecting this. And as the generations grow, they will continue to do this. So make sure that you're acting with care and that you're communicating changes clearly, you're involving your employee community, but just don't let fear completely silence your values.
No, I think that's a definite feeling we can all perceive from some of the changes that we see large organizations making is it's a knee-jerk reaction out of fear. And that has an ability that we see it happening at that level to trickle down. One of the things I think would be really interesting to talk a little about is, so we talked about reframing and you talked about that and a little bit about, not slowing down, but maybe shifting or focusing. And maybe this is a good time to talk a little bit about your inclusivity aptitude framework, because I think one of the things for me, when you say that, I nod my head and go, yes, absolutely, that's great. And then my brain goes, okay, now what do I do? And that's
Yeah.
where I think maybe this could be valuable, and talk a little bit about the how.
So let me say this, like from the beginning, at Diversiology, we've always believed that DEI and DEI, JBA, you know, like all of the initials, right, had to be deeply rooted in a business imperative and a human imperative. And one of the things that we have created at our organization to help companies is an inclusivity aptitude framework, right? That helps people think about how are we inclusive throughout the talent management lifecycle, right? Because again, we thought that the answer was, oh, let's just hire more diverse talent and drop them in. Well, you know, it's important to look at how do we operationalize inclusion throughout the whole experience. And so talent acquisition and onboarding, phase one, right? This is where the journey begins. And it's about attracting diverse talent, but it should be also about setting them up for success from day one. So yes, we're going to start with inclusive sourcing. We're going to make sure that we include bias-free screening. So one of those things that we didn't really talk about, you know, is that you can get people in the pipeline, but if the people who are interviewing them don't have a consistent, structured way to take them through the interview process, we've got a problem right from day one, right? And so we need to remove those hidden barriers. And how do we also emphasize transparent compensation? You know, pay transparency is here, and how are we implementing that? And is there a structured onboarding that's culturally attuned and make people feel like from day one, we can help you find your people? And let me just tell you this, I'm just going to tell you a little pet peeve of mine. We tell people to bring their whole selves to work. Stop lying to people. People cannot bring their whole selves to work. People can bring their chosen selves to work. They can bring their authentic selves to work. But there are some barriers around who we want to show up at work. There are parameters. So please stop telling people to bring their whole selves to work. There are parts of Rocki Howard nobody ever wants to see in a work situation and ever should. That doesn't stop me from bringing my authentic selves to work.
Yeah.
So we're not just hiring people, but that whole process of acquiring talent and onboarding is we're starting to build trust. And that starts from the very moment we make the offer, right? Then let's talk about performance management. And okay, here I'm distracted. I've noticed a trend of marginalized candidates being hired in the lower job grades, and that diversity gets desaturated as you rise in job grades. And that is true, Rachel. Maybe we can come back to that, right? Because there's multiple reasons for that. And that is the reason why we need to make sure that we're being inclusive through the talent management process, right? And so let's talk about, okay, now people are here. Let's talk about performance management and development, which is part of what Rachel just brought up. Once folks in the door, the next challenge is, how do we support their growth fairly? This means one, bias-free evaluations, consistent feedback, tools that set everyone up to succeed. It's one of the reasons why I love the work that we do at Textio, because if you look at the Textio report, and when I stop talking, I'll try to drop it in the chat, we see all of the different reasons why marginalized people don't get fair feedback. And that's really important. And so I can't grow from this entry level place unless I'm getting constructive, critical, bias-free feedback. But that also means that we have to equip managers with inclusive coaching skills and ensuring that learning opportunities are accessible and equitable. So how do we learn? Does everybody have access to the same amount of learning? And access could mean a couple of things, right? Like when we're doing training, is it something as, are we putting on captions? Is there reading involved? Are we being sensitive to the neurodiverse? So are we giving multiple ways to be able to learn? Like, how are we giving people who are working in the office and virtually equal opportunities and access for performance management and development? And look, you all, we know that the truth is development opportunities aren't just given by L&D. And so what are the other dynamics that are excluding people from the process? Because development shouldn't be a mystery. It should be a clear and supported journey that everyone can participate in. So, okay, now it's time for succession planning and advancement. And so who are we preparing for leadership and who might we be overlooking? Like, we look for emerging leaders early and ensure that the criteria for advancement are transparent. And it's not based on who you know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, who you go play golf with, who you do these things. They're through sponsorship, mentorship, especially across lines of differences. We need to help build that leadership pipeline that reflects the full spectrum of talent. And we need leaders in the room. We need talent acquisition leaders in the room. We need HR leaders in the room that interrupt bias and speak truth. Let me give you a real example from my own career. There was a conversation, I wasn't in the room, about an opportunity, and someone brought my name up. And the leader at the time said, well, Rocki has 4 kids and this opportunity would require her to relocate. And I'm sure she wouldn't want to do that with 4 kids. And so let's just move on. And I today am so very grateful for the HR leader in the room that said, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's take a step back. Is she qualified for the job? Absolutely. Goodbye, Alyssa. Thank you for joining. Is she qualified for the job? Yes, she is. Now, I want you guys to notice this wasn't a conversation about DEI. This wasn't a conversation about we're trying to promote Black leaders. This was, we have this open role. Here's the thing. Is Rocki qualified? Boss said, yeah, and she's probably the best qualified of everyone. Then the HR leader said, then you put her through the process, you invite her to the process. If she chooses to opt out, that's her choice. Guess what, you all? I didn't choose to opt out. I got the job and I moved 3/4 of my family, and it started a very significant career trajectory for me. We have to be unbiased about succession planning, engagement, retention, onboarding. Inclusion doesn't stop once someone is hired or promoted. It's about the full life cycle. Are we building cultures where people feel safe and recognized and valued, right? Are we pairing that with fair compensation reviews that mean recognition, or are only your most extroverted people getting extra comp because they're advocating for it, and your introverts aren't because they're too afraid to speak up, right? Whose voices aren't you hearing and aren't you considering when you think about every aspect of engagement and retention? And guess what? Even onboarding matters. When folks do leave, we need to exit them with dignity. We need to gather honest feedback from them and use it to improve the culture. We also need to realize that a lot of us are in situations where the people that we exit may be our next client. They may come back to the organization. They may be our customer. So how are you treating them? And do they feel included and belonged, even if they've made a decision to exit, or even if you've made a decision to exit them? And then finally, we think about this in terms of infrastructure, culture, and leadership. This is the backbone, the systems, and the leadership behaviors that make or break inclusion. This includes policy design, pay equity audits, supplier diversity, executive accountability. When we tie inclusion outcomes to leadership goals, the work isn't siloed. This work does not belong to a DEI practitioner. It doesn't belong to your HR person. It doesn't belong to you guys strictly as TA people. It belongs to all of us, but people don't know that because we don't tell them, and we don't tell them what the expectations are. Because look, at the end of the day, DEI can't just be a program that will never work. It has to be part of the DNA of an organization. And that's why we believe that it's inclusivity aptitude where everyone needs to build the muscle. So, we have specific focus areas and competencies for each one of these phases. And I hope just giving you that brief overview certainly helps.
Absolutely. I think that is, and we saw by the applause in chat, I think that we might just put that on the website. No, I'm kidding. But I think you nailed it. I love it. And one of the things that I think is so important, and I think it really stuck out to me, is creating an environment to evaluate for succession planning every aspect of your organization fairly and equitably. Because you're right, you have the introverted coder versus the outbound salesperson, two dynamically different types of personalities. They need to be evaluated for promotion equally the same way. Doreen, you had a question, raise your hand, so I want to make time for you.
Yeah, two things. One thing I was going to say is I heard it mentioned that to build trust with diverse, which in this topic, it's diversity, but in trust in general with candidates, I don't think it necessarily it starts with the offer process. I really think it starts from the get-go, like from the time they apply, the transparency and providing them valuable feedback. And, if they're not the right fit, explaining them, providing them the information on, what they were lacking or what they need to brush up on or whatever the case may be. Because, I've some of my most valuable relationships that I've built over the years weren't with candidates that I've even hired into a job. It's just because I've been honest and really given them that respect and the decency that everyone deserves. And then the other part of it that I was going to say was when we're talking about talent acquisition and our part with diversity. Obviously it's something that should have always been of high importance and held precedence, but unfortunately it has not. So to be able to give the people that we want to present to our hiring managers, that we have to be able to build the trust with our hiring managers to show them that, not everybody is going to fit into a box and look, explain the transferable skills, and if they don't understand why certain people don't have the skills that are exactly what they want, if they're a diverse candidate, for example, well, maybe they weren't given the same opportunities that everyone else has had, throughout their career. So they've, had to start at a different place, but that doesn't mean that they're any less capable or that they don't have the skills that can be transferred and upskilled or reskilled. So it's looking at the whole person, at the whole package, and what value they can add in, in all ways.
I think that, Doreen, is so well said. And one of the things that I've read, and it's something that I've always considered, is also called investment hiring. I don't know if that's the right term, but you're not going to get the perfect fit every time you go to bring somebody in the organization. You're going to have to train them. You're going to have to mentor them. You're going to have to develop them. But the output of that investment is stellar employees that are, thriving in your culture, in your environment, because you've invested back in them. And that's a trend that I think we're starting to re-embrace that we lost for a while. And so I'm so glad you brought that up. That's such a great point. Thank you for that. So we have 5 minutes left, and I promised Rocki, who has to run to another call, that I would be on time. And Rocki has an amazing set of tools that are available for free. And I just wanted to make sure I took a moment and shared that with everybody. So I'm going to put this link in the chat. And you can go and take a look at it. And a lot of the aspects, and Rocki, you could probably do this better than that, but a lot of the aspects that we've talked about, there's frameworks in this tool set to help you think through the process of improving or creating or revamping whatever you're doing. So I would highly encourage everybody to go take a look at it. I was duly impressed by it. So Rocki's done a phenomenal job of putting these tools together. And but I wanted to just also, we've got a couple minutes left. Anyone have a question that is burning that we didn't address, or a point that you would like to make that you think we could discuss for a minute or two. And Norm, we're not going to talk about the bad call for the Mets. That's not a topic for this call.
Brutal. Absolutely brutal.
Listen, the Twins just paid the umps higher. It's a supply and demand.
I love, Belinda, your comment. You know, it's essential for you as TA professionals to feel empowered. And I do think it is about that partnership with hiring managers. And one of the things that they see you as a trusted resource. That way, when they see you as a trusted resource, when you submit a candidate that may be a non-traditional candidate, they're much more likely to say, I'll interview them because I trust you. So Belinda, I think that's such a great call out. There's so many things we could have talked about today, but you know, it also is this focus on skills-based hiring, right? Skills-based hiring helps to get past this too. Like, can we stop like penalizing people because they don't have the degree? If I've had 20 years of experience in this particular sector, et cetera, do I not have the skills that you need to require, that you need for the job? Right. And yes, I'm not talking about your attorney or, you know, your doctor, but there are certain jobs where we've just put it. And how many of us, I mean, I'd like to know how many TA people have a degree in talent acquisition. Yeah, that's the point. And so like we should be the first ones to be able to help people understand that maybe I don't meet the degree requirement. It doesn't mean I'm not qualified or I don't have the skills to do that job. Yeah, I love that. We've implemented experience in lieu of education and implemented that 2 years ago. It's amazing. And so I think it's just about how you look at it, and not how we screen people out, but how do we call people in?
Yes, absolutely. Well, Rocky, so I would probably, on behalf of everyone, maybe we could do this again in a little while because there's so much to unpack and talk about here. I'd love to have you come back and continue this discussion, but I do want to not make you too late for your next call. So I want to be on time. So, and to everyone who is here, thank you so much. I love this topic. It's a personal thing for me that I love to see us continue to discuss and improve on. So thank everybody for making time to come and being part of this. I really appreciate it. And again, I'll be sending out a recording of this and a link to the tool set when it's over. So thank you, everyone, again, very much. And everyone have a great remainder of your week. And if you're in Chicago, I hope to see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.